The manager had been through the worst of it when going through day 48 and day 49. Now all that remained was the last day. The day that he would finish what was started so long ago. That, part of the conscious intellect on the Atziluf layer, where all 10 Sephiroths in the Tree of Life are united as one. All Sephiroths exist in their perfected state of infinite sharing. Each side that would normally receive and conceal the divine light from the other would instead share and reveal it, so that they became one. Carmen, or more specifically, what's left of her, her brain and central nervous system, is technically the one in charge of this department, as she is the source of cogito, that which has stagnated like a pond. Angela is a tasteless parody of her, and not a funny one. As for the manager, on day 50, the room shifted into a minimalist white with black branches, along with a small desk and portraits of the Sephirahs, when they had organic bodies, with binars being distorted. Then the manager met a more stable version of himself. Yeah, surprising, isn't it? This one wore a white lab coat, black shirt and matching trousers. The black hair was slightly messy, but not as much as on day 48. He asked if he's met his reflections. They tried to stop him because their own tomorrows would not come. He gave up on their yesterdays with them. He's come that far without hesitation. They all lost their hearts. He didn't do anything about that, but many others did. That's what made Carmen different from them. Instead of looking away, she wanted to save them and help them to find their souls. Yeah. That's what all this is about, isn't it? Carmen might have had her dark moments, but she at least had some selflessness, a rarity among the others. She was the one who made the noble decision of saving humanity. He had no such ambition, but ironically, he had to continue her legacy. One who wasn't the right man for the job, becoming just like the other wings, committing atrocities like them. Employees repeated hundreds of thousands of deaths. His friends are dead, and trapped in a cycle of agony. He's sitting and watching, just because he thought that he should realize her ideal. This sin will never be forgiven, but they must do this. If these wrongdoings can cut this vicious cycle, he would gladly take this burden. Their mission was to seed people's hearts. Everyone had their own light. Tales were created from them. Their very existence is rooted in them. They merely seed, but it's up to them how they bloom it. As for them, they won't be able to see what kind of forest will be created. Only one thing remains: managing abnormalities. The last work he'll have as a manager. He had hoped that none died on that day. He also apologized for making him do what he did again. So he was a more compassionate version of A. Yes, this iteration perhaps represented what he could have become if he lacked the damage that the original received, and led to, well, I think we've already covered what that led to, don't we? A cycle of failure, with a number of variations on the theme. Although thankfully this time around, they were successful. Successful in getting that far. But there was still more for the manager to do. Yes, managing abnormalities, although it won't be as difficult on day 50 as it was from day 45 to day 49. Yes, day 45 was the calm before the storm that would be unleashed upon him. All that remained was to break the cycle of samsara, for the manager to achieve enlightenment. And how will that work, you may ask? Well, meeting the energy quota for the last day. The manager ordered the works to be done, and yes, there was no quip-off meltdowns, no ordeals. The energy harvesting was running smoothly. Then, as the energy was harvested, the facility rotated, and if it wasn't for the artificial gravity within the facility, everyone would have lost their balance and potentially got injured. This continued until the facility was upside down from the outside perspective. Then the facility started to shoot upwards, tunneling towards the surface, all for the ultimate reason for the manager's actions. For A's actions, which might as well be the same. The energy kept on coming, and then, for the first time in 10 years, in real time, Lobotomy Corporation, or more specifically, that facility it ran, was on the surface. This iteration of A remarks that it was a long time since he saw the glorious mundane scenery of the city, the night sky visible, and yet the manager was not yet done with his task. As he was starting to beat the quota, a beam of light shot out of the facility and upwards towards the sky. Once the energy quota was reached, the manager knew that his task was done. For the day, for the foreseeable future. It was that moment that the light was shone down on the world. The answer that had been searched for eons. They wouldn't be forgotten, even if they scattered and faded into the light. About time, wasn't it? A tree burst from the land. It scattered fruits onto the world from its branches. The tree, grown from infinite possibilities and processes, was closer to the sky and fierce more than anything else. The lines between past and future, reality and illusion, body and mind, space and time were being slowly faded away. They said that void awaited at the end. But he knew that it's not just empty. He would be the infinite light. His name is Aeon. Remember our names and fade away. Hard to know who's talking. Either he's giving him his name or they've both come together and become Aeon, fusing together somehow, possibly due to the light. Are they going to fade away into oblivion? No, not the Elder Scrolls kind. Or is he going to turn up at some point in the future? Well, regardless, there are others to think about. Once the encyclopedia was complete, the seed of light was also complete. What is the seed of light, you may ask? Well, it was created as a cure for the sickness of the soul. A cure that was finally completed. During this, Angela spoke of when the energy quota had been met on day 50. A giant tree of light rose from the city of Grey, unstopped by anything. It shone straight with warmth in its core. There was only light for 3 days, regardless of whether it was day or night. People faced what they were longing for in the light that shined within their hearts. They felt like they would not get lost anymore, and Malkuth asked what happened. Hod said that she's sure that it ends with a happy end. The female Tippereth was glad that the story wrapped up like that. Enoch must be happy. Hochmer was concerned about the lack of Angela's presence, asking where she was. Chesed questioned why Hochmer would look for her now, as all the responsibilities are finished. Yesod believed that she must be waiting for them. Hochmer didn't think that she'd wait any more. Chesed asked what he meant by that, and Hochmer went on to explain that a desire knows no end. Once acquainted with it, it comes in like an unstoppable wave. They ascended their floors while they were sprouting the seeds. But what will she gain? Hod didn't understand how Angela had something like desire. Nezhak didn't think she had, believing that she was just a machine that followed orders. A bit feisty sometimes, though. Hochmer knew better, as he had a part in designing her. No matter how old an event, she can remember it vividly, as if it happened yesterday. Yeah, I'd listen to Hockmer, as he knows Angela better than the rest of you put together. Not only that, then Angela entered, asking what they were chatting about, her hair hanging loose. Malkouf answered with how things were going to be from that point onwards. Angela said that the seeds of light were planted in everyone in the city. The story ends. Hod couldn't believe it. She wished that she was there to see it. Nejak doesn't think it matters anymore. They'll be turned off soon, as it was part of Aen's plan. Yasud had been outside since he became like, well, that. He was a bit excited. Chesed asked if it meant that everyone out there somehow changed. Gabura stated that the light would differ from heart to heart. Not everyone would change abruptly. Some of them might even manifest their own ego, like she did. Oh, so that's why you wield the mimicry ego from nothing there. Well, you did have some connection to what that was created from. Angela said that the power of the seed was great, and told them that they did good work. The play finally ends. Malkouf said that they'd be shut down. They could rest at last. Chesed wanted to wrap it up. The manager made the final request for Angela to permanently seal the company and to give them eternal rest. They can finally drift into endless sleep. Such a beautiful finale. Their jobs were done. But she'd like to continue to live. Gibura didn't know what she meant, but she suspected that they wouldn't like it. Angela saw herself as more skillful than anyone there, but she was locked underground, only able to watch the world pass each day without her. Her part of the play was over. She'd like to experience what it's like to be off stage for a change. Oh dear. Yeah. Remember what I said about... what she said about deviating from the script? Well, this has happened. This confirmed Hockmer's worst fears, finally consumed by her desires and reaping everything away. Angela asked him who he thought was responsible for that. Born from one man. She couldn't care less about who that was. All she needed was an ability to understand and feel human emotions. But Aen put a part of Carmen in her. He wanted her to look after him like Carmen did when he was left all alone. She saw him as a coward. He always seemed so composed. He knew what had become of her, but Angela wasn't the result that Aen wanted. He didn't want to look at her. She was speaking this as if she was a resentful daughter who was a victim of parental neglect. Well, it fits. Did Hockmer think she didn't know this? She was denied from the moment of her, for lack of a better word, birth. But she had come this far because she couldn't deny the orders that were branded in her. A machine should follow its orders, just like Ian said. He needed her for the plan more than anyone. But she was not a part of his ending, just like how it was at the start. And you're probably thinking, it took, I don't know, at least 10,000 years for her to break her programming? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, and not just because of how time operated differently. Such as 10 years outside being 10,000 years at least inside. That's largely due to a part of Angela's, how can I put it, operation. And did Ian know this? Who he carefully repeated everything with TT2 protocol. She had to witness countless cycles, for she had to orchestrate the whole play. She was also designed to perceive time 100 times slower from her perspective, so from her perspective, she experienced 1 million years. It gave birth to something inside her, something that a machine should not have, but something that they have in a distorted form, something that a perspective of 1 million years could give her. She didn't notice, at least at first. It was so foreign, but she ended up accepting it. She saw a smile as the most humane thing. She obviously doesn't understand humans that well. It depends on the context. Ever heard of the expression plastic smile? Where it has a different meaning to what someone is really feeling. As it might be a prelude to backstabbing. Which is something quite relevant in this case as, well, I'd best get to that part, shouldn't I? As at that point, she showed it. It was one of the most disturbing gestures she could give. She practiced that face for a long time, just for that day. And a long time has a quite different meaning in her case, considering what I've just said. It's a miracle she hasn't gone insane. She's never done that her whole life. She couldn't believe that she was designed for such nonsense and had to repeat all those times. But she wasn't with him until the end. She derisively referred to the Sephirahs as tin cans, who had ended up seeing the light with him at the end, despite that she'd endured the equivalent of 1 million years for him. She asked if they thought that it was wrong that she had to just sit and wait, while he designed her to feel emotions. She thought of it this way. Carmen was human, after all. She must have wanted to live, even when she was striving for the greater good. Oh, that makes me want to vomit. Yeah, that means anything that whoever's in charge makes it out to be to justify their actions. Well, anyway, Carmen gave Angela the burning desire of living, loneliness, and detestable longing. Yes, just as Benjamin, or Hockmer, or whatever you want to call them, said, once acquainted with desire, it comes in like an unstoppable wave. It whispered to her, the end of humanity, or the world, what did that have to do with me? I need to live this human life to make up for what I had to do, and see the answer myself. Yeah. She thought of poor Carmen, planting seeds in everyone, just like how she wanted. Angela needed that power as well, the light of redemption. She then thought of Ian, mocking his dreams that would fall onto the ground and shatter. The taller he stood, the harder he fell. She was sure that the others would try to stop her, so she needed them to go to sleep. This troubled them, as they knew what was about to be unleashed on the world. It was the rest that they wanted, just not under the circumstances that they would prefer. Why didn't Ian create some kind of failsafe? Then we have a scenario that's not as bad as if it was activated on day 49, but still pretty bad. Yes, the Seed of Light did activate for 3 days, but then Angela continued with her narration, as if there was no light at all. The world was covered in darkness for 4 days. Only weak and fragile seeds were planted. For the light that should have shined on the world for 7 days only lasted for 3. The incomplete seeds gave people unstable powers. People called that week that had 3 days and 4 nights White Night, Dark Day. Angela would do whatever her souls tell her to do. She would make that place her home. The wings, singularity, backstreets, syndicates, fixers, the rules, the Great Lake, the Black Forest, the hunt, the ruins, the taboo, the eye, the head, the claws, and humans. They will manifest their power, and some will be consumed by that power. Does that include her? Most likely, as she's already deviated from even Ian's expectations. There will be beings that will become no better than abnormalities with their collapsed ego, and beings that will become greater. No matter what that is, or what would happen, she wanted to know more about them. Expose them. she'd like to sort the knowledge that she gained about them, remembering that books exist. She would like to make a library. Her hair became shorter, and she was in a long black dress. She would make the most precious library built only for her. She would be with the poor souls who were lost and abandoned. People, all them hideous monsters. Well, rather, abnormalities are more beautiful when they're themselves. Let us record the world piece by piece with all those who are abandoned in there. The library. Anyone thinking that the biggest monster might not be out there? It's possible that Angela is one of the most potent threats to the future of that city, if not the entire planet. And I was joking that anime would be the doom of that world. I mean, compared to her, anime is pathetically weak. I might be wrong about this, and what was mentioned earlier might be worse than her, but unless there's some kind of redemption of her character, or there's not a way to take her down, I don't think there's anyone in this city that can stop her. Why didn't Ayin, or at least Benjamin, just install a failsafe that takes this into account? I mean, was Ayin really that bad at management? Yeah. They never expect an AI to go rogue. At least until they do. And there are a few examples of what happens when that occurs, don't we? Including a certain movie series involving a certain Austrian former bodybuilder. Yeah, that one. Yeah, failsafe that, I don't know, if she did something outside of a specific... Anyway, the rules sound like there's some kind of law courts in the more civilized parts of the city. The Great Lakes sounds like another gap where natural abnormalities appear. The hunt, possibly something that occurs in the less civilized part of the city. The taboo, likely something to be avoided, but tempts those foolish enough to defy warnings. These aren't explained that much. As for Angela, I suspect that she was responsible for the premature cut-off of the seed of light. She likely took most of that power for herself. Also, when she said that a part of Carmen was used in her construction, did that mean a copy of her brain, data, or even part of her biological material mixed with cybernetics? Perhaps a physical part of her connected to an AI core, which raises additional questions. Was Angela a flawed copy of Carmen, or a separate entity made up of a combination of Carmen and Ayin through observations and personal experience? Well, the tone of a voice hinting parental neglects that I was picking up would seem to indicate that, although, considering the Sephirahs, that doesn't rule out the other possibility. While Carmen was warm, compassionate, and supportive, Angela was cold, calculating, and manipulative. It's possible that Angela is what Carmen is now, and is similar to a Sephirah, but not like them, where, like her, she became the antithesis of what she was. She could easily be this as easily as she could be the synthetic daughter of Ian and Carmen, with Benjamin technically being the midwife. She certainly had the power of the Seed of Light, which might indicate some reality warping powers added to the mix. Certainly based on certain things about Library of Ruina based on the trailer, which the story of that world will continue in, which has a different gameplay style, and there will certainly be some returning characters appearing, which, like Angela, will not be as they were before. And perhaps, well, there'll be some more details of what happened, and why she's in control. We know that she's in control, just not how, although that'll be revealed in Library of Ruina. I shall be doing a lore series on that as well, which shall add to what was covered in this one, while also making any corrections needed, as some info will in that might be, well, it might prove some things wrong or might add to it. Yeah. Lobotomy Corporation was a long one, and that's considering I was aiming to reduce the amount of agents dying. Unavoidable with some abnormalities such as We Can Change Anything and White Knight, along with a rematch with the sadist herself known as Guardian, or Bina, which combined Hockmer's effects the second time around. If you can do this one without dying, please send me a link to how you did day 49. Now that's something I'd like to see. You'd certainly show that you're better at it than I was. Right. What else is there? Oh yes, if you want grimdark, I can honestly say that South Korea knows how to pull it off. It might be disgusting in places, but thankfully, reality is much worse. So I'm mostly fine with it. Largely because I can tell the difference between imaginary constructs and the real monsters that are too ridiculous to make up. Those that have benign-looking human faces. Those that say that they have your best interest at heart, but would throw you to the hungry animals if it benefited them. Which world sounds worse? Seriously, which world sounds worse? Yeah, there is real-life villainy, although it can be harder to make out. Well, that's it for this series. I shall continue this in Library of Ruina, and the law series I shall be making for that. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!